My fiance's late wife's sister wrecked my car and won't stop bothering me to fix it. I told my fiance I'll take legal action if he doesn't make her stop, and I'll leave him if he doesn't cut contact with her. I'm 25 and I'm about to marry my fiance, who's 29, in May. When we first started dating, he told me he was married from 20 to 22 to his high school sweetheart. Sadly, she passed away from sepsis due to a botched surgery. He didn't handle it well and stayed close to her family, especially her father and two sisters, who were 19 and 24 at the time. At first, it was hard for me to deal with their history and the fact that they were still a big part of his life. He would spend time with them on her birthday, their anniversary, and the anniversary of her passing. It was uncomfortable knowing he was reminiscing about his past love, but I worked through my feelings on my own. Over time, I became more secure in our relationship and it didn't bother me as much. Last year he proposed and I was thrilled. I love him deeply. However, I recently found out that he never told his late wife's family about our engagement. Lately, I've been exploring different coffee shops instead of my usual spot. The sister of his late wife worked there, and although it was awkward, she noticed my engagement ring and seemed unhappy. I didn't bring it up, but later my fiancé told me she had been messaging him on social media about it. I was upset that he kept our engagement a secret. He apologized, feeling drained by the situation, explaining that he didn't want to hide me, but also didn't want to hurt them. I understood but asked him to be upfront with them from now on. However, a week ago I received a hurtful message from the 24-year-old sister, accusing me of never being able to replace his late wife and implying he only stayed with me for money and physical reasons. I confided in my fiancé, who comforted me and promised to set boundaries with her. But then I found my car vandalized with grave robber painted in red, which was heartbreaking as I had saved up for it for a year. The tires were slashed and the windows cracked. CCTV footage from a nearby store showed it was his late wife's youngest sister's car. I decided to file a police report, but my fiancé asked me to wait until he spoke to them. I agreed only if they paid for the damages and apologized directly to me. He arranged a meeting for last night, but it turned into a chaotic argument. The sisters insisted they had nothing to apologize for and demanded I leave their family alone, including my fiancé. My fiancé explained that he deserved happiness and their support in finding love again, but they accused him of betraying his late wife and claimed he never truly loved her if he could marry someone else. They even suggested he would eventually grow tired of me. The youngest sister insisted he tell me they were right and that he would never love anyone like his late wife. My fiancé broke down and I had to take him away from the situation. I informed them I would file a police report and sue for damages, and the next time they'd see us would be in court. Once we calmed down, I gave my fiancé an ultimatum: either he cuts contact with them or we call off the wedding. I couldn't tolerate this harassment and didn't want our future children subjected to their bullying. He argued that they wouldn't bully children, but I reminded him he didn't expect any of this either. He called their father, who was somewhat understanding but still defended his daughters. They accused me of trying to control him and labeled me as horrible for cutting them off. I feel stuck. I can't live like this, and I don't believe I should have to, especially because we're getting married. Since you likely still have all the proof of the messages and such. As for your fiancé, I understand why he kept in touch with them, but he made a huge mistake by not telling them he's moved on and loves someone else. He hid you from them, which was foolish. What did he expect? He needs to stand up for himself and assertively address their behavior. I can see why he values their relationship, but if my family treated my partner this way, I'd cut contact until they could treat us both with respect. He might be feeling guilty about moving on, but if you can work through your concerns about this, so can he. It's clear that you would never replace his late wife, and if she were still alive, he'd choose her every time. Well, she's not, so they can't press charges. Consider taking legal action and getting a restraining order if he doesn't stick to cutting contact. It's time to move on. Definitely not the asshole. Update. Hey everyone, just a quick update to clarify some things before I discuss my ultimatum with my fiancé, either later today or tomorrow. I haven't slept at all in the past 2 days for obvious reasons. My phone keeps buzzing with messages, mainly from the 19-year-old, and I don't know what they've been telling people, but I've received messages from their uncles and grandparents saying horrible things about me too. Obviously, they've been spreading their version of events from this week and twisting the truth. I haven't blocked them yet, because I want to gather as much evidence as possible for the inevitable case. Regardless of any outcome with my fiancé, I will sue and file a criminal case for harassment and vandalism. I'll also seek a restraining order, but I just haven't had the mental strength to do it yet. I'm hoping my fiancé will help me. I haven't spoken to him since the argument at the table, except to tell him that either his family goes or I do. I decided to give him a few days to process everything and I'll reach out when I'm ready. It's been a week since the first message, and it's a heavy decision to contemplate leaving people you've known for 15 years and grew up with. He did set firm boundaries with the sister from the coffee shop, as I've seen the messages. He essentially told her she had no right to talk to me if she was going to behave that way, and she responded with more insults. He ended the conversation by telling her not to message me again and to ensure everyone else followed suit. I was satisfied with that. As to my knowledge, only one person in that family had an issue. It may not be sufficient for everyone, but it was enough for me to feel safe and comfortable. For those suggesting he needs therapy and counseling, he's already receiving it. He started before we even began dating. Following an incident at work, I'm unsure about their family's counseling status. The first time I had a conversation with any of them was that night. Some people are curious about how his late wife died. It was due to a botched weight loss surgery resulting in sepsis. Some wonder if he was somehow involved in the surgery, hence the family's extreme reaction. However, he had no part in it. He prefers larger women and wouldn't pressure anyone into such a procedure. Now on to her speaking from experience. I also want to clarify why we didn't call the police about the car incident. It was entirely my idea not to file charges in exchange for a face-to-face apology and payment for the damages. He only wanted me to wait so he could talk to her and see if she regretted it, then have her father pay for the damages. At the time we thought it was just the 19-year-old who damaged my car, not both daughters. Neither of us wanted to ruin her life. However, when I found out it was both of them, I was ready to move forward with pressing charges. Thank you all for your messages, and hopefully I'll have a positive update for you tomorrow. Edit. I chose for him to take this time apart. It's not about him being indecisive. I suggested he take time to think things through, and I'll reach out when I'm ready. This decision is for me. I don't want to be chosen only to end up 3 kids down the line in a resentful marriage. Please understand that. Update. Well, what a wild morning I've had. My fiancé came over bright and early, and I've never been so tired. You may want to take a seat because this will be long. Sorry in advance. First of all, I want to set the record straight. Many people are criticizing my fiancé for not cutting them off from the beginning, which I don't think is fair. He's a very mild-mannered, calm, and calculating person, and that's who I always knew he was. Nothing has changed. If he had been like Rocky Balboa and flipped the cafe table, shouting obscenities, he would not have been the man I fell in love with. He did exactly what I expected him to do and exactly what I was comfortable with. You may be attracted to other things in men and expect other things, and that's awesome, but not me. Anyway, I texted him saying I thought it was time to discuss this, and he was back home not even half an hour later. He had been staying with a friend for a couple of nights. During our time apart, we had no contact. We sat on our bed to talk because my back was sore from all the packing, and I wasn't going to force myself to sit at the table. Before we even started talking, he asked if we could cuddle for a minute. It definitely eased some of the tension, and we were able to communicate like a couple and not like awkward strangers, because regardless of what some people believe, we do love each other, and it took me a long time to feel confident in that fact. Before anyone calls me a doorman again, no, I was still sure I would stick to my ultimatum. The first thing I asked him was if he felt he had enough time to make his decision, and he said he didn't need time. He was very shocked and bewildered at how much could change in just a week and how everything he knew was shaken up. He couldn't think and went numb. He apologized for not taking a more defensive stance at the cafe and didn't want to make excuses for it. His explanation was that he genuinely didn't expect such a strong negative response. He hid the engagement because he knew they hadn't fully processed his late wife's death and would be upset at the news. It wasn't like I would feel upset by them not knowing, which I wasn't really. He's known these girls since before they were in double digits, and he would never have thought they were capable of it. It came so far out of left field that he froze. I asked him if there was any possibility that either of them had feelings for him, and he looked very confused and disturbed. I mentioned how I've heard it's not uncommon for siblings to develop feelings after a loss, and he pondered over it. Turns out, you were right. He said the 24-year-old, about 8 months after his late wife's death, made a move and tried to kiss him. He immediately left and told her mother about it. The parents are now divorced, but they weren't at that time. She was a minor then and messaged him saying she would be 18 soon, so it wasn't a big deal. Her mother made her see the school counselor and didn't allow her to be alone with him for a while. It was years ago, so he had forgotten it ever happened. He said he was sure that wasn't the case now because it had been so long, but not so convinced. Not that it matters anymore. He opened up his Facebook and gave it to me to read. The 24-year-old had been messaging him, but he ignored ignored it. She ranged from telling him off to crying and saying how betrayed the family was to trying to manipulate him against me. He said he was sure that he needed to put them behind him and had been thinking about it on and off since he proposed but couldn't bring himself to do it. After this week, the fire was lit and he knew what he had to do. It was all abstract until suddenly it became very real. He asked me how I'd been coping, and I told him I felt like I'd done everything right, but somehow things turned out worse than if I'd been the jealous type and stopped their contact from the beginning. I tried to be understanding and put in so much effort to be secure in myself and our relationship, only for everything I worked on to be thrown in my face like I was a mistress cheating with him. He didn't blink the entire time, just listened. He admitted he should have been more observant and realized I was struggling with this so that he could help me, but I've always been the strong one, so he neglected to. He promised to do better. As I've mentioned in a few comments now, his parents had him late in their 40s and are retired. He hates involving them in negativity, but I was stunned when he said he's been talking to them about this since the first Facebook message. They were very understanding, but his father took a tough love approach. He said the best quote I think I've ever heard: "Get your act together before the jig is up." They offered to come stay for a while and help us move. I don't think that's necessary, but I really appreciate the thought. On the subject of moving, I made it clear that I would not be living in this house any longer than I had to, and he completely agreed. His parents offered to find us a place in their state if we wanted more of a support network, and I'm honestly considering it. They're only a state away from my own family, so we'd be a lot better off. His job is remote, and I should be able to find work there easily enough. I've also been in contact with a friend who's a mechanic, and they've quoted me between 1 to 2K for the damages, but that's just a cost estimate at a discount. A few people have advised me to get a real statement and to shop around. The real cost is between 4 to 5K, and that's just for the noticeable damage. My friend thinks they've done something to the engine, so thank God I couldn't drive it anywhere. He believes I might be entitled to a replacement car altogether. If so, I'll be sure to sue for it, and that won't be cheap. After we discussed all the emotional aspects, he asked when I would feel comfortable going to the police. I made it clear that he was okay with that or I'd go on my own. He looked the most determined I've ever seen him, saying that this was what needed to be done. He wasn't going to let them continue their actions, even if it had to be at my expense. Right now, I'm in the bath, relaxing with bath bombs, but we'll be heading to the station as soon as I'm done. He's downstairs printing out the new quotes from the mechanics and the messages the 24-year-old sent him over the past couple of days, so we can go prepared. Some people have said that nothing will come of it, and they may be right, but I have to try. I'm hoping my local police don't have anything better to do. It's a small town. To conclude, I made sure to ask him again if he would cut them off or if I had to leave. Without hesitation, he said they were no longer going to be a part of his life, even if I decided to leave. He did ask for one last meeting to say goodbye to her parents, to put a close on that part of his life, and to explain to the girls that this is not my fault but his decision. After seeing how cruel they were capable of being, we would block them on everything and move forward. I was completely fine with that, so there we have it. Writing all this out and being able to talk to people about everything has been both helpful and a good distraction from the dumpster fire. That was my life, and everything worked out as well as I could have hoped. We'll see how his meeting with them goes. I'm sure they won't be very happy about it, but that's not my problem. Thank you all, and I'll update you after they've met up. Update 3. So we drove down to the police station with our stack of paperwork and had a couple of hours of discussion. They were so understanding about everything. As some of you expected, they did mention I should have come earlier, but they didn't really care because it was only a few days. They explained that it often takes people about this amount of time to actually file charges if there wasn't an immediate threat or danger. I handed them everything, and it looks like I've got plenty of evidence. They'll be contacting my insurance on my behalf to get the ball rolling so they can come to do a check of my car themselves, and then they can open a claim with me if I want. They're not filing a claim, they're just notifying about the criminal damages. I've filed criminal charges for harassment and vandalism, and they'll notify me with more details about my restraining order this week. My fiancé told the police that he was planning on meeting with the late wife's family and asked if that would contradict my case, and they said no. We're not married at the time of filing, so legally we're two separate entities in the case or something, so my car is totaled. My mechanic friend, I'm going to call him Tom because I can't keep saying my mechanic friend, and his partner at the shop did a full check on my car, and this is the damage they found: shattered windshield, 4 slashed tires, 2 broken windows, obvious paint damage, an unknown substance in the engine oil, and battered bodywork. They said with this amount of damage, I should just go for a new car, so that's what I'll be doing. If anyone is curious, it was a Volvo. I'd always wanted one and managed to buy one new 2 years ago. Either they get me a new car or they'll be set back about 60K. Either way, I'll be alright. The amount classifies the vandalism as a felony, so they could be looking at jail time too. Now my fiance met with the family on Saturday and Tom sat by the window. I currently live in a one-party state, so as long as my fiance consents, the recording can be used in my case. While it may not be as drama-filled as some of you may want, it was still pretty stressful to see. They met at the same cafe that we had before, and Tom sat a few tables away. My fiancé arrived after their father, and before them, they managed to have a calm conversation for once. My fiancé told him how he was feeling, and Phil was very understanding but still trying to minimize. He was saying things like, you know, they miss LW, and they'll come around and just need time to come to terms with you moving on. He kept trying to initiate paying for the damages, but my fiancé wouldn't talk about it until the sisters arrived. It was like butter wouldn't melt with the 24-year-old, but the 19-year-old came in like the Tasmanian devil. My fiancé didn't acknowledge anyone until it had all settled down. He then said this would be his last meeting with all of them and they'd be going their separate ways. He turned to the girls and said that he would miss who he thought they were, but the way they treated people, especially me, horrified him. He said that this was all him and they needed to accept that I was not to blame. He even said that it was me who offered the apology in exchange for not filing charges. The 19-year-old then interrupted, asking what charges and saying that no one was going to charge them for barely touching a car. She was a deer in headlights when he asked what they'd done to the engine oil, and the two looked at each other. It seems they didn't expect me to find that out. Cue up the grin. The 24-year-old actually tried to touch his hand and told him he had to stop me from pressing charges because this would ruin her and interfere with the 19-year-old's college. He said it was too late, and the cops should be issuing a warrant soon. It can take a few days. I thought it was an instant thing, but apparently not. This is when their dad got involved again and said for everyone to calm down and fix this like adults. Now he wants his girls to be adults. That's where the recording ends. As for moving, we're pretty much all packed up and have a truck coming on Friday. We'll be staying with his parents until we find a place. We're looking at buying this time but might get an RV in the meantime so we're not all stepping on each other. I doubt his parents would mind at all. This is the last update for a while. I think I have a wedding to finish, a venue to change, new invites, etc., and less than 2 months to do it. Send help, but thank you all for being ears and helping me get through this, if only to distract me from ruminating and digging a huge mental hole.